Good evening, members, officers, members of the public. Welcome to those also watching on the live stream to this Development Committee on 26th of March. A few announcements to start off with. Can I draw everyone's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by council staff. Item 1. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Linden and from Councillor Shaw. Councillor Belton is substituting for Councillor Shaw. Item 2, minutes from the meeting held on the 26th of February 2026. Are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 3, let's receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chairman. With regards to item 6, I'm a patient at the doctor's surgery.
Okay, thank you for that. So we move on to item 4. Items referred from the weekly list. Application reference 25/0073/full, The Haven, 30 Eveldore Avenue, Hockley. And Mike Stranks will present the report. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. This map on the screen that you'll see there, the site in rectangle, there you go, south of Eveldore Avenue. It's a detached chalet bungalow we'll show you some details of in a second. But whilst we're on this image, the background history for these members have probably picked up from the report details. This was like redeveloped under a consent granted some 25 years ago. And you'll see that the surrounding characteristics isn't like Branksome Avenue to the south, where everything is frontage with relatively the same depth about gardens. It's what we would call development in depth. It's got courtyards, cul-de-sacs, and is a more modern form of development. If we can, how do I? I've got to close that, haven't I? Just showing you the existing building. No, that's jumped to the other way. The proposal, Chairman, is to demolish the existing building you'll see here and provide 3 dwellings, a 5-bedroom detached house on the site frontage that has rooms in the roof you'll see described in the report as 3-storey, and 2 conventional 2-storey dwellings at the back. They are the same in design, but what we call handed, where they're alternates, left and right, symmetry, but they're finished in different materials we'll see in a moment, and a carport structure here with car parking spaces in the front. If we then look at the photos, we've got a number of photos that are worth showing members through the character, because I think that's one of the issues. You'll see that this is some photos of the development in the surrounding area, various properties. You'll see, if members particularly note the flat roof dormers, quite often the committee get concerned that we have a policy on pitched roofs, but this is a good example where officers say that you get a development with a character, perhaps a Georgian style character, where the flat roof dormers are appropriate. And if we just skip through some of the details here to see some of the house types, because the architect has taken his inspiration from this area, he hasn't necessarily copied them, but he's looked to say, well, what is there and what is surroundings and what must I respect? If we just go through a few more, hopefully by skipping through these as we are, members are getting a perception and feel for the kind of development that's in the area. If you see on that one, you'll see there's like an oversailing feature over the front. And then again, opposite the site, you'll see the dormers again. And if I quickly zip to the top, to give you an idea of the existing dwelling. Here we go. That's an image of is that the front? Yeah. Front of the existing dwelling that's proposed to be demolished. There's an interesting shot from inside the site where the
Mike, sorry, could I ask you to get a bit closer to your mic?
Where the owner has fenced around the frontage of the site. You'll see the new dwellings opposite. And there's 1 or 2 preserved trees which we'll show you on a map in a moment. But that's basically the flavour of the existing site and the surroundings. If we come out of that now and look at the designs, this is the house to the site frontage. It has an integral garage on one side with a room over. And while I laboured about the dormers and the form of the development in the vicinity, you'll see that this is similar. It's 3 dormers in the roof on the front, roof lights on the back. And then if we look at the plot 2 at the rear, one of the dwellings here with the oversailing feature, which is why I pointed it out. Hip roof design. And then if we see plot 3, it's the same plan, but this one finished in differing materials, predominantly brick with a differing render. If we go back to the layout, members will see that the proposal achieves all your guidance in terms of plot width, garden areas, and the space standards that the government requires dwellings to occupy. The preserved trees we were talking about are here, along the proposed drive-in, and this one in the front. This second one here, which is sort of like a fir-type species, that's not preserved. You'll see from the report that officers conclude that the layout in this case, although backland is quite often recommended against, in this case, because of the nature of the character of the area in depth, the point I laboured on the first plan, that officers feel there is a degree of fit that makes this acceptable and compliant with policy H1. You'll also see that the extra dwellings, albeit just 2, would make a small contribution to the council's housing supply position. There is one minor change. This bin area, we've recalculated because of confusions with scales. This is actually more than the 20 metres you require for collection. So if members are minded to approve the application, we'd like to add to that an additional condition that the bin store be revised to within 20 metres of the carriageway, and that quite happily can be done as a matter of condition. There's land within the site frontage as part of redevelopment that could accommodate that. It's the bin collection point for these 2 dwellings at the rear. So on that basis, that additional condition, the recommendation is approval, subject to the remaining conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Mike. We have one public speaker for this item. Mr. Fairbairn will speak in objection to the application. Mr. Fairbairn, would you like to come to the mic? You have 5 minutes. I'll give you a minute's notice when you've got a minute to the end.
Chair, thank you for letting me speak today. We object to this officer's recommendation to approve this application and ask members to refuse it.
Could you speak a little bit closer to the mic?
Hello.
You might find it easier, actually, if you sit down and actually direct the mic at you. That might be a little bit easier.
There we go. Is that better? Brilliant. Sorry about that. I'll start again. Chair, we object to this officer's recommendation to approve this application and ask members to refuse it. We recognise the council housing and land supply position, but that does not remove their need to determine applications in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations clearly indicate otherwise. In this case, they do not. This is an over-intense form of development. On a single residential plot, one dwelling is being replaced with 3 detached dwellings, including 2 rear dwellings served by a shared access. This is not modest infill. It is clear intensification of the site and a backland form of development that conflicts with the purpose and policies aimed at protecting character, layout and amenity. The proposal also creates far too high a density for this location. These are all large family houses, and the main house is in fact a 5-bedroom, not 4. This means a substantial increase in occupation, activity and pressure, not a plot that currently contains one dwelling. The existing pattern of development is part of the Ecclesdale is not one plot, being split into three. With large detached dwellings pushed into rear garden land, the current plot contributes to the openness and soft landscape character of the area. Replacing that with three houses on an access road, parking, turning space and a hard surface would materially change the grain spaciousness of the site. In effect, a small cul-de-sac is being created where none currently exist. There is also out of the step with the modest forms of backland development seen elsewhere in the area. We have generally been smaller and lower in scale, often bungalows rather than large houses. The matters because bungalows are less overbearing, create less overlooking, are better able to respect neighbouring privacy and light. There will be unacceptable harm to neighbouring amenity. The issue is not simply a loss of a view, it is a shift from the openness to enclose, more overlooking, more dominance and more activity. Three houses instead of one means more vehicles, more domestic noise and a clear erosion of neighbouring living conditions. The impact of privacy is particularly serious. Neighbours who previously faced a single bungalow form would now face multiple new first floor and rear facing windows. The result is direct overlooking into private gardens on a scale far beyond what currently exists. Around 8 or 9 windows looking towards adjacent gardens is substantially unreasonable loss of privacy. There is also a real issue of loss of natural light. The application itself accepts concerns about shading affecting the new dwellings because of the train trees, particularly T5 and T15. But that same relationship works the other way too. If these large buildings are inserted beneath and around those trees, neighbouring gardens will lose what limited sunlight they currently receive. A combination of mature trees and large built-up form of risking leaving adjoining gardens in much deeper shade. The tree issue is also a major concern in its own right. The Council's tree officer raised concerns about T4, T5 and T15. In relation to T4, the application has still not properly demonstrated the risk that has been resolved. Their own tree report confirms the driveway continues to intersect T4's root protection area. The response relies on assumptions and proposed no-dig method. But mitigation proposal is not the same as mitigation proven. Important details are left on later stages, and for a retained mature oak, this is simply not robust enough.
Minute left. Got a minute left.
Okay. The concern on T5 and T15 shown the same wider problems. The layout is too tight and it creates forcible future pressure for pruning because of shading. Nuisance and properties of the new dwellings is a sign that the scheme has not been designed with the sufficient respect for the site's constraints. Finally, the public benefit is modest. The proposal delivers only a net gain of 2 dwellings. The limit benefit does not outweigh the harm to character, amenity, privacy, light and tree protection. For all those reasons, we ask members to reconsider this as an over-intense and poorly fitting form of development and to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairburn. If you'd like to return to Okay, we have 2 of the ward councillors here tonight. This seems like an anomaly every time I ask, but do you want to speak as ward councillors or do you want to reserve your right to speak in the general debate? If you want to speak as ward councillors, you will be barred from voting. Okay, thank you. So then, yeah, I think everyone's beginning to wilts a bit. Okay. We have no visiting members, so I will just open it up to debate now. So start off with Councillor Squire Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two questions. Can you comment to the statement on page 32 where a neighbour says that there's impact on access to the local bridleway? I'd like more information on that. And also, can I have some detail on the possible damage to the trees and how that will be negated? Thank you very much.
Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. The bridleway, as you can see from the location plan, the location plan here, there is a green area to at the end of Etheldore Avenue, and there is a bridleway that starts there. That big area of green is a protected woodland area, and I think it's 48. There is like a footpath that starts at the end of Etheldore Avenue, and that is the bridleway there that is referred to.
So thank you. Can I come back? Is that okay?
You want to come back?
Yeah. So are you saying there's no restriction on access to the bridleway with this development?
No, there shouldn't be, because it's Etheldore Avenue is the road, the highway, and then at the end of there is like a track that goes off into the woodland. So there is no obstruction that would be caused by this development.
Okay, sorry to push you on this. Can I just
That's okay.
ask, you said that there shouldn't be. Are you saying there definitely isn't?
There definitely isn't.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And to my other question about the trees, thank you.
Bring up the tree. The tree plan. No, it's the other one. That's arbitral. No. This one here at the bottom? No. Sorry, we're just going to find the tree plan, this one, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So this plan here is the tree plan that was submitted along with the full arboricultural report for the development. The trees have been very carefully considered with the design of the development, and the arboricultural report contains full details of all the protection measures that will be carried out to protect the trees. There is no dig. There is no dig for the one that covers the driveway. Is that T15? This one. It's okay. So this one here is T15. Is it 15?
Sorry, can I ask
so
you to
there
get
is
a bit close to the mic?
There is a no dig proposed for this area. This driveway here has been sort of straightened out a little bit to keep away from the root protection of this area. The main concern is this one here, and this one will be, there will be a, on the right part. So they are going to do an assessment trench before any work commences, obviously to see where the roots of this tree are and how they would be affected, and then that will determine how they will look at how they will build the foundations for this property on plot 3. And there is some different methods which are proposed, handing method, and also they can bridge the roots if necessary. So the arboricultural report does conclude that all the trees can be sufficiently protected by following the principles and measures contained within the report.
Thank you. I'm sorry for my ignorance. So once they do the dig and they check where the roots go and how deep they are, they decide on the foundations, do they, that are best be placed there? And do they have to report back to you? Do they have to come back to planning or development council?
There is no requirement for them to report back to us, but it will all be monitored and by a qualified arboriculturist.
So it will be monitored,
Yeah.
definitely. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help.
For your information, we did actually bring this up in the chair's briefing beforehand, and we were advised that there is a certain amount of cut on the roots that wouldn't affect the life of the tree, and that the arboriculturist, the council's arboriculturist, James Choate, he seemed to advise that would not be a situation where it would kill the tree, and that it could be modified. I don't know if officers want to put anything more on that one. Okay, so next speaker I have is Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few questions, but I may take a few and then come back if that's okay. My first question, page 15.12 refers to policy H1. Now, policy H1 says the council will resist the intensification of smaller sites within residential areas. Now, from everything I can see, this is intensification of a site. It's overdevelopment of the plot. This site had previous planning permission granted that seemed much more in keeping with Etheldore and the properties around it. So I'm wondering why we're not giving more weight to H1, especially as the backyard development. We're against backyard development, and this is, to my mind, from what I can see within the report, this not only conflicts H1, it conflicts backyard development. So that's one of my main issues, and I want to understand why more weight's not been given to that policy. Now, I know we have a limited infill statement that we will look at limited infill. We're getting a net gain here of 2 properties. I don't believe that what these properties are bringing, what this development brings, outweighs that. I don't think 2 properties outweighs the harm to the existing area, so I don't think sufficient weight has been given in that regard. We spoke about this. The design meets all the requirements in terms of distance between and everything else. It is just meeting those boundaries. It is very, very tight on that site, and I've got concerns about that. I believe the site needs development. I'm in favour of developing the site. I think this particular set of plans is too much for the particular space. Based on what I've seen so far, I'm open to hearing otherwise on that. On pages 28 and 31, this comes back to what Councillor Squires-Coleman, and I'm not convinced by what I've just heard there. I don't think we're giving enough weight to the risk to the trees. We're relying on a hand-dug trench going ahead to tell us where the roots are. We're going to give permission on the basis of something we're not quite sure on. That concerns me. We've got 4 protected trees, and we're about to build 3 huge houses in between them. I think the risk there is greater than we're considering. I know we're in a stage of tilted balance and we have to consider tilted balance. It's an unfortunate stage we're in because we shouldn't be had the numbers have gone up, and I don't think that's fair, but I suppose that's not something we can necessarily take into consideration. But I do worry that we give too much weight to tilted balance because of that, and then we are contradicting our own policies as a result. If I can, in the first instance, rather than going in, if I can have a bit of reassurance and understanding about the site, the boundaries, and why this isn't classed as intensification and why these aren't classed as backyard developments that are inappropriate. I think if we start there, thank you.
I don't know who's taking that.
I'll take
Mike,
it.
Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. I made the point on this plan, sorry, that you can't see. When I opened the presentation, because I think it is directly relevant to the points just raised. The term is backland development, okay? And the speaker is right that the intensification, knocking down 1 building, 2, 3 or more, maybe some flats, quite often is results in an unacceptable form of development. And there's reasons for that. They don't have enough parking, they don't have enough garden areas, they don't have enough side isolation spaces. There's overlooking concerns. There's often detailed evidence as to why a development like that fails. What officers have concluded in this case is that your policy H1 guards against that and says, you know, we're not going to be building in all the gardens everywhere and ruining the areas we live, but where they would fit and make a contribution, then they may be found acceptable. Unfortunately, it's the judgment that members have got to take. We as officers are obliged to advise you, and the conclusions we've made are in the report. It's quite reasonable for members to think otherwise, but it is a form of backland development, but officers are saying it's an acceptable form of backland development. And if you look at the kind of pattern of development in the vicinity, particularly, I don't want to because I want to show the whole. If you look at the adjoining development in particular, see the houses proposed at the back would run through this kind of alignment in a similar relationship to the one at the front. So if we then look at the site plans, the point has been made, okay, you have maybe minimum standards of 1 metre or whatever, but the requirements here, if you look at this plot 26, are probably not dissimilar to the two at the back. So officers, in looking at it and looking at your policies and criteria, came to the view that this is an acceptable form of backland development. The assurances on the tree issue, it's not uncommon because of root protection areas. I think it used to be established that years ago, the drip line from the edge of the tree, if you imagine the tree upside down in the ground, was the rooting systems. But more modern thinking has said because of various structures, people having, I don't know, hard bases for summer houses, things like this, swimming pools, that quite often the root system goes off in search of nutrition. We're not talking of when you see a tree blown over in the wind, we're not talking of the claw roots that anchor it to the ground. We're talking of the fine fibrous hair-type rooting systems like spiders' webs that go through each year the soil, seeking out nutrition, oxygen, and moisture. And that's the key rooting system that safeguards the tree's protection. And they can withstand a certain amount of invasion and changes in that system. But what developers often find is when they're digging around on a site, they don't quite know. They have a good idea, but they don't quite know where the rooting system is. So if the report that's been done anticipates that if while they're digging they see that it's a little bit different, then they'll respond accordingly. They may do handy methods to safeguard the rooting systems. They can also do a foundation design, a bit like piling, that goes through the system and takes the support bypassing the rooting systems. So officers are content that the report is trying to anticipate the eventualities and respond accordingly. I think, Chair, that was limited infill. I think that's the same really as the point I've made about policy H1, that yes, sometimes developments like this we recommend against, but I think I've made it clear the reason why officers feel otherwise on this particular occasion.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. I appreciate officers' position and where officers' reports are coming from. We're people that know these areas quite well and recognise some of the real life challenges. Looking at that map, obviously I can see the sense there in the line across there, but I'm presuming from what I can see and from what I can remember of Effledore, they don't all have shared access, those other properties running along the back, and I think that is a fundamental difference to this, because that is not a particularly large access way for what could be at least 4 cars at the back trying to manoeuvre that site, and then plus the cars at the front, in the front occupancy, a 5-bed dwelling. I think to presume there'll be less than 2 cars is naive. There's probably likely to be many more than 2 is the reality, especially as the children that potentially live there grow up, if it's a family home. So the separate entrances make the difference to me in regards to those properties at the back. I also have concerns about setting precedents. You let this one plot turn into 3, and it's not 3 small dwellings, it's 3 big dwellings. What stops other properties on that site and others in the area doing the same? And then we really do have an intensification issue. I note that highways say there's no issues in the area and there's off-street parking. I recognise that, but I've tried to park in the area and it can be challenging. And I think we're looking at adding an awful lot of cars, visitors, deliveries, construction. So I'm just not convinced. I understand the officer's position, absolutely. But as a member, looking at it from a more practical position, to me, this looks like overdevelopment of that site, and I don't believe we're meeting H1. I think we're compromising H1. And the other issue, it talks about policy DM1 seeks to avoid overlooking. Now, I know there's always an element of overlooking potentially when we have these sorts of developments. It says it's inevitable in this case, and that word tells me that, again, it's inevitable because we're putting too many properties on one spot. We're overdeveloping that site. So that's where I am from what I've seen so far, but I'll let other members come in and see what comes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
I'd like to pick up on the page 32, the neighbour representation concerning inadequate drainage. The area can be subject to flooding in heavy rain and connection to sewer may not be adequate, and ask whether there has been any evidence of flooding in this area and whether the erection of 3 houses as against 1 actually contributes more to a flooding and sewage issue.
Mike? Or Julie?
Sorry. I have got the Environment Agency flood map. The whole of the site is located in flood zone 1, so there's no flooding from rivers at all for the site. This is this shows the 1 in 30 surface water drainage, and there is a small, where's the site? There. So you can see to the front of the site that there is some risk of surface water drainage, and it's a 1 in 30, 3.3%. So the application is supported with a full surface water drainage report, and it has put forward a attenuate rainwater tank, sealed water features for gradual release, and the rainwater to go into the sewer. So there's no flooding. There would be no flooding in the 1 to 30 situation, and then in the 1 to 100 plus 40% climate change, all the surface water can be safely contained on the site. And they have also put forward flood mitigation measures to be used in the construction of the dwellings as well, so that is obviously designed to exclude water. So if there is any flooding, the properties remain watertight and safe. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp, do you want to come back?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pick up on a couple of issues around the tree, I'm afraid. Could we have that site plan up on the screen, please? No, the other one. That's the one. Okay, I still got some concerns about the tree. First of all, I get a little bit annoyed that when these proposals come forward and we're left with having to make a decision without not necessarily having all the information in front of us, particularly about the roots on this particular tree. I believe I'm right in saying that it is actually an oak tree. It's in a neighbour's garden, and I suspect, from what I can see from Google Maps, that the tree has been there probably before most of the properties. So the root ball on that is going to be fairly substantial. So I would have liked to have seen a report done before it came to our committee about how the root ball is situated. Going forward, if they were to find that the roots around the base of that tree, particularly where that new building is going to go, and they find that there is a problem with that, what then happens? Does that make the planning null and void on that particular house? How do they mitigate that particular issue? The other problem, of course, with the tree itself, I would assume that if they are putting footings in for that building, they're going to be something around 2 to 3 metre footings. How is those footings going to be protected from the tree? Because the tree will continue to grow and it'll push on those footings. With a tree that close on an oak tree of that size, I'm not sure how much the insurance would be, but I think that'll have an effect. The next concern I have, and it's a little bit difficult to tell from the picture there, but again, looking on Google Earth, the crown of the tree itself is fairly substantial and will overhang the new building. Two problems that I'm concerned about. One is that during the building process, how they're going to put the scaffolding up around that and work around that tree. And secondly, once the building is up, the new neighbour would be entitled, under current legislation, to be able to cut back that crown of that tree. I know it's got a TPO on it, but would be able to apply for that and put the tree out of balance. So again, I still have a concern about that particular tree. I've got a couple of other questions as well, Chair, but I'll let them deal with that one first.
Mike, Julie?
Thank you, Chairman. So as I've said previously, the arboricultural report has taken into consideration all the trees that will be affected by the site. It's also worth noting that there are a number of TPOs, a large number of TPO trees throughout the whole of this housing estate, and they are all they are all well maintained. So this is the tree in question. There is a small, where the red line is there is a small amount that needs to be trimmed, that's all. And the house has been designed to fit underneath it. The eaves are 5 metres, and obviously with the hip roof, the house form will be situated away from the tree. Like I said, I mean, there is a full, very comprehensive arboricultural report submitted with the application, and we are satisfied that all the trees in and around the site will be protected.
Councillor Steptoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I understand that the phrase that the trees will be protected, but I think it's more about how they're going to be protected during the building process and going forward. Has the owner of the tree, which is obviously a separate site, have they been consulted about what's likely to happen to their tree? Because it will have an effect on the tree. So I'm still unhappy with the fact that we haven't got the report on what the root ball is about. I wondered if perhaps we ought to think about, Chairman, about a deferral there until we've got that report, but I'll leave that thought with you. The other item I wanted to pick up on was the bin location. So if you can put the same drawing back up. You need to perhaps zoom in on that a little bit, where the bin location is. Okay. That I didn't completely follow what the officer said when he mentioned about the bin store there. Did the officer say that that's not within the 20-metre distance from the road for collection? Is that correct?
Chairman, yes, we actually remeasured it, and it was 28 to the farthest point. So obviously the contractors will only retrieve within 20 metres. So this would need to be relocated closer to the street.
Okay, so it would mean that the bin store would be potentially down towards the front of the property, which I think that makes that completely impractical for those properties at the rear. When you want to go and empty your bins on a wet, rainy November day, and you've got to go down there, I'm not sure that that's very practical. So I'm not sure I'm happy with the solution on that particular point. They're the 2 points that I mainly had, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify about a tree. It's not what's above, because that can be pruned back and cultivated to whatever shape and size you want. And that includes, if you notice, the same sort of trees that are that large in the high street, which have been cut back to accommodate people's visions out of the premises above the shops. It's the question of how far the roots go. Now, I'm not a specialist by any stretch of the imagination, but I grow quite a few plants, and the roots do tend to go out further than what you actually think they do. Like it's been said, they're fibrous roots and they connect each tree together. So one tree talks to another, and if one tree is being invaded by a disease of some sorts, the following tree will do something to combat that disease in some shape or form. If you looked at several programs which I have on the television, it will show you exactly how trees talk to each other through fungus and fibrous roots. Getting away from that, there is a way around it. I know that they can pile it, put plastic pipes in and pile it with a floating floor, so that would take care of the root problem. But nevertheless, what's getting to me is the parking area. If you've got 4 cars and you're not using the garage, how are you going to manoeuvre 4 cars in that small area? There's no way. There's just no way, unless you knock the neighbour up next door and say, I've got to move my car, I've got to turn it round so I can drive out, and you won't be able to drive out of that area. Plus the fact, in number 26, or is it, or 28, I can't remember which number it is, but the property next door, how far away is it from the blank wall that it's facing, and has it got any windows in it as well, in their wall? And is it a bungalow or a house? It doesn't demonstrate to me what it is. If it's a house, then it might have windows at the side, which they will be looking at a solid brick wall, which isn't very nice, I can assure you. However, we do seem to have quite a bit of backland development going on. And I know this for a fact. In London Hill, there's backland development behind the employment place in London Hill. That's backland development, and that's quite tight as it stands at the moment. And I feel as though it's just overbearing. I don't think there is enough room to swing a cat, let alone a car. If you've got a big car, it's all right if you've got a Mini, but maybe a large car, these new cars that are out today, these big heavy cars, that's what worries me. And the next thing that worries me is the tree where the driveway is, with cars going up and down. You could have 4 cars in and out all day long. You've got a lorry there, which we suppose was going to come up and down there. Those roots of that tree are going to be damaged before the road is put in. Even when the road is put in, the weight of the vehicles will damage the roots. Those roots are very shallow to the surface. So, I mean, when they dig out a road that's going to take traffic, it goes down by 2 foot, 18 inches, 2 foot. And those tree roots will not be any deeper than a foot, and they go out. And that's what I'm particularly worried about, that the traffic over those routes. Thank you.
I think we've had quite a lot of debate about the trees, and I think officers have given us quite a comprehensive reply on that, but I'll ask them to come back to me again, so don't worry about that. The one thing about overlooking that's been mentioned a few times now, I'd appreciate it if officers can explain whether there's any mitigation on this overlooking, whether there is restricted openers or windows with obscure glass.
Thank you, Chairman. So plot 26, which is the one next to plot 2, there are no windows on either of the flank elevations. So there's no windows on plot 20, number 26, and there's no side windows on plot 2. The house at 26 is a two-storey dwelling with a similar distance from the boundary as plot 2. In regards to plot 3, let me just. Sorry, I think there is a. Yeah, so again, there's no windows proposed within the flank elevation of plot 3 facing the shared boundary with number 40. So there's no flank windows at all in terms of overlooking. And there is a separation distance of approximately 13.25 metres maintained between the rear elevation of number 40 and the flank elevation of plot 3, which is pretty comparable to other dwellings around the site. So there's a little table underneath on page 20 underneath paragraph 42. So there's some numbers there of dwellings that have a similar relationship, and obviously their separation distances. So the most is 14 metres and the lowest is 10.9 metres in that same sort of relationship.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. I assume that the soakaway will be in the back gardens for any flooding that may occur. I assume that that's what is normally happens with new developments. They put the soakaway in the back garden rather than in the front. But nevertheless, I still don't think that the tree that runs down or the roadway that runs down the side, I personally think that tree will die in 10, 15 years if the roots are that high in the ground. I do believe that will die because it just isn't getting the moisture that it needs as an oak tree. Plus the fact the parking, I don't think the parking is adequate enough to accommodate 4 vehicles in front of those. Even if you put one vehicle in front of the garage, and not all garages are used, as you very well know, for a vehicle. It's generally used for household stuff rather than a vehicle. So I think the parking is inadequate. Thank you.
Okay, you've made your point on that. Thank you very much, Councillor Stanley. Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My biggest concern with this development is the 2 properties in the back garden. And basically, that's a shared driveway. It's not a roadway. It's not a roadway like the other roads in the area where 2 cars can pass. It's not. It's a shared driveway. One of the estates in my ward in Hockley, when they were all built, they were built with shared driveways, and it causes no end of problems with residents. And nearly every single one of them now has built on their front garden. And as we know, that causes problems with rainwater. So my biggest concern on this is the shared driveway. It's just going to cause problems if people coming out, people coming in, and it's a very long shared driveway. If that was one property at the back, I wouldn't have so many concerns with it. But to put 2 properties there with a shared driveway, I think it's just going to cause all sorts of problems for the whole property, and it's just completely overcrowding the development. So 1 property in the back might have been acceptable. 2 is completely overdevelopment, and on that basis, I'm not in favour of this development. Thank you.
I think one of the problems that we have here as a committee is that, notwithstanding the on-site conditions, Essex Highways, as the statutory body, have been consulted about that, and they have come back and they hold weight. Whether we like it or not, unfortunately, that's who we have to defer to. We may not agree with it, but if it goes to appeal, they will take top trumps. So I hear what you're saying, and I do understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure how much weight we can put on that because of the statutory authority. Moving on, Councillor Belson.
Thank you, Chairman. I completely agree with what my colleague Councillor Stanley was saying, actually, especially in regards to the parking, the manoeuvring, and what Councillor Constable's just said about the shared access. Big houses often mean big cars, not always, but often, and I've got real concerns about the accessibility in and out. I just want to make one more point. Our own arboricultural officer relates to, on page 31, to the fact that the rear eastern aspect could lead to conflict with any new homeowner and may result in an increase in applications to prune to the boundary, remove the nuisance of encroachment, and so on and so forth. If we know this site is going to cause future problems, that tells me this site is inappropriate for this volume of development. So I would like to move a motion to refuse this application. I've got a few reasons as to why I would like to do that. I would hope that the applicant comes back with a more manageable site, but I would like to move a motion to refuse.
We have a motion there on the table. Can I just ask, before we go there, I have got a councillor who hasn't spoken yet. If she can, if Councillor Page, if you'd just like to make a comment, and then we'll come back to your motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say that I also agree with many of the members' comments this evening, but in particular about Councillor Steptoe and Councillor Stanley's comments around the tree. There was a similar arrangement on Stile Lane where we did the back garden infills round it. There was a 150-year-old oak tree which had a TPO on it, and these were constructed back in 22, and that tree died last year. And I just think it's really unfortunate. The whole reason of putting these TPOs on is to protect these trees and things and our environment. So I'm just really concerned that, you know, that exactly the same thing's going to happen here, I'm afraid. Yeah. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And one more member who hasn't actually spoken, Councillor Vilma-Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to voice my concerns, if I may. Continuing on from what Councillor Constable said, regarding the shared driveway, I've got a question for the officers, if I may. It's been alluded that the bin store is further away than it should be for collection. If the bin storage ends up being on the shared driveway because there's nowhere else to put it, is that shared driveway actually wide enough? Because from the plans that I've seen it looks very narrow. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, sorry. It would be wide enough. The idea with the private drives is that two vehicles enter, so that one of the vehicles isn't left out on the street waiting for one to exit. So as long as you'll see the way the layout is designed, it's wide at the front here that would allow the second household to pass if they happen to meet. Now you'll see there's an area of landscaping here, which is possibly where they would put it. The landscaping could be a problem. Yep.
Sorry, can you zoom in on that, please, Mike?
Yeah, I'll try. This area here we're talking about, Chairman, the idea with the private drives may only need to be 2.5 wide. This one is 3.2, so it's already on the wider side. But what is required is that in order to use the driveway, vehicles aren't left paused on the highway. So if somebody wanted to turn in at the same time as somebody wanted to leave, there's room here for those two vehicles to sit so that the one going in can pass and the one going out can exit. Now there's an area of landscaping here that would probably have to be very low anyway because of visibility to this house, but that could, along there somewhere, would be a suitable bin store. Or the applicant may choose to provide it somewhere under here for easier collection across the pavement. I take the point raised earlier, it's a long way for these people to drag, but the drag requirement is for the refuse contract, not for the residents. So officers are comfortable in recommending to you that whilst this was a bit further away, there's room within the frontage of the site to relocate the bins.
Okay, do you want to come back? Yep. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that actually I have real concern that the whole thing is just not workable, not just for the bins. I personally have problems walking 5 steps to empty my bin to my outside bin. I just think this is overdevelopment, and as suggested earlier, maybe one property in the back might actually be more practical, not just for the people living there and the residents, but actually for the whole neighbourhood and for the whole layout. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, now, as every member has now had their chance to speak, I need to now move to the...
we say that there's going to be 9 bins, and they're big bins, and 3 waste bins, food waste bins. And the area that it says at the moment only shows 6 bins. So it's going to be quite a large area to collect all that refuge.
Okay, I think we've heard that. Right now. We have a motion to refuse. Councillor Belton, would you like to give your reasons?
Thank you, Chairman, and I may need some help in the legals on this, but I don't believe the proposal takes into policy H1. It's not limited infill, but harmful and over-intensive form of backland development and intensification of the area. The width of the access road is a main issue. Now, I know it meets the criteria, but it's the usability of that with the number of vehicles, the size of the vehicles. The tree, I know we've done intensely on the tree, but I don't think all the answers have been met. We've got 4 trees with TPOs, and I don't believe we're giving sufficient weight to what our own arboriculturist has said in regards to the potential risk. And we've heard about other scenarios where that risk has not been able to be mitigated in other areas. So they are my 3 main. And then we've obviously got the bin situation, which I know is talking about relocation, which would have to be an amendment to the plans anyway. So I would like that to be considered as a reason too, given the practicality and the feasibility of that being doable without seeing that on a plan.
With reference to your third point there,
I was just going to say, within my first point, I didn't use the term overdevelopment. I think I used the term intensification, but that might need to be tweaked accordingly to policy.
We can get some advice on
that.
Yeah,
thank you.
When it comes to the tree, I think it would probably be a little bit better if we could be a bit more specific. I might suggest that there should be a hand dig to explore the root position before we get it come back to committee, if it's going to come, or if it goes to appeal or whatever. Because I think just to say that the tree is a problem, I think that's a little bit too general. We need to be a little bit more specific on that.
Absolutely, and I'm open to officer advice on the terminology and what the appropriate steps are, but the reason for including the tree as a reason for refusal is that I don't think we have all the evidence that we require to make a full decision. So if the result is that we need more information first, then I'm comfortable with that as a statement.
Okay, so over to officers.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've captured the 2 about the width of the access, the bit about the tree enhanced by your own words, and the bin relocation, which is quite self-contained. In respect to the first reason, members have put forward about over-intensification and over-development. I think it's incumbent on me to point out that when you have over-development, there's normally failings. Think of it a bit like an MOT, okay? And I did mention that previously, which is why officers were recommending that on this occasion it complies with H1. So I'd be careful with overdevelopment, because you have to try and say, well, why is it overdevelopment? Clearly, you've got the side space between dwellings, you've got the parking to standard. I know some members have had issues that they don't feel it's enough, which is a fine point to take, but it meets the parking standards. You've got the garden areas, and that the height and scale of the buildings and the designs are all comparable with what's there. The only thing that I'm thinking, without putting words in your mouth, is if you can't demonstrate, if you like, the mathematical detailed criteria that we work to, are members thinking that it's an overdevelopment in terms of in conflict with the character of the area? Okay, so you talk about the designs and the intensity generally. I think if you was to go into an appeal and say, there's too many dwellings on the site, overdevelopment in that sense, the applicant would come back and say, well, your garden areas are required to be 100, I'm providing 124. Your car parking is 2 spaces per dwelling, I'm providing that. Your side spaces are 1 metre, I'm meeting all of that. The detailed criteria that normally causes a site to fail, officers are quite comfortable that on this occasion it passes, and partly led to our recommendation. But I'm in members' hands. If members say, well, look, thanks, Mike, but this is what we feel, yes, it's inadequate in this respect, inadequate in that, that's the way you must go. But to defend a reason on overdevelopment, if it satisfies the criteria, what else has the applicant or the architect got to do?
With regards to the tree issue, sorry, I'll come to you in a minute. Is there anything on there, on what has been suggested so far, that you think we could be refusing on?
I think members' view has been that they're uncertain. They need the certainty. These trees are preserved, and you don't feel that there's too much left to chance. Sorry, you do feel there's too much left to chance. So I'm comfortable that members, having looked at the report and giving consideration, are saying that the root systems should have been explored. I think these were your words, Chairman, so that when it comes to committee, members would know the situation, not be looking at options and guesswork if it goes one way or whatever. So I'm comfortable with that. The bin location is just a pure matter that it's too far away at present, so that's easy. The width of the access road, I did explain that, it works, but members have got other views. So you're saying that because of the numbers of vehicles, particularly the 2 at the back, that you don't think on this occasion it would be adequate. I could do with some help as to why, if it can come down to 2.5 metres at 3.2, that's inadequate. But my main point was, members were looking at intensification and overdevelopment, and if this goes before an inspector, he'd say, well, okay, planning authority, why is this overdevelopment? And he would go through, as I said, like an MOT, the various detailed criteria that we work to, garden areas, side spaces, and the matters that I mentioned. And on each test, this proposal would be more than that. It'd either meet your standard or it would be slightly more. So the inspector would struggle to try and find why you feel it's overdevelopment or over-intense. So I'm asking for a bit of the flesh on that bone if you can. I'm suggesting that members have said the other developments nearby, although they're in depth, as I pointed out in the presentation, they said they're not like this. They're not off a private drive. They're off little cul-de-sacs, courtyards, etc. So whilst the arrangement of buildings is similar, this site would be different and perhaps out of place, which is why I was wondering if members were really thinking, yes, we know it meets the garden area requirement, but it's still not right. It does not fit with the pattern of development in the area. Well, that, to my mind, Chairman, would be a character argument.
I think that's good advice. Councillor Belton?
Yeah, thank you. That is good advice, and actually something that I'd written down. The established pattern on Etheldore is detached houses on generous plots, rather than triple subdivision of one plot, and I think that speaks to what Mike was just explaining there. So whilst I'm using the overdevelopment and over-intensification of an area, it's not in keeping with the sites on Etheldore. So it's about looking at how that comes into it. So it's the subdivision of one site for 3 that is an issue, and the size of those properties.
I think if I hear right, what Mike is suggesting is that we use a reason of policy H1, that it being out of character. Forget the over-intensification, because we will lose that straight away. Yeah, okay. So, okay, so Councillor Page.
Sorry, Chair. When you look at all the other developments around there, they've all got their own garages, and this development is doing a shared garage, isn't it?
It's actually a carport.
Carport.
Yeah, garage for all intents and purposes, but it meets the standard. That's the problem.
But it does stand out against all these others where they seem to have a lot more room.
Well, that could be included in character.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mike.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, perhaps it wasn't clear in my presentation, but the house to the front has an integral garage, and that obviously faces the street. The carport option is to the houses at the back, which are somewhat concealed from the street. I'm worried if members are saying it would be out of character because of the lack of garages, because the one that faces the street does feature a garage.
I think we're probably on rocky ground on that one, because, as I say, it's another one of those things where, yes, we have concerns, but unfortunately it does meet the standard. Okay, so let me just, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. It may be very well that the vehicle authority turn around and say that their roadways are adequate, but it's only a single track that goes to these two houses. Now, I believe that that should be a double track, because I've got to wait for somebody to clear that track if I lived in one of those houses so that I can get out. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have your entrance to your property so you can come and go as you please. You can't come and go as you please if you put two properties there with only a single track. It doesn't equate at all. And you're right, it's out of character. Thank you.
I hear what you say, but again, the problem is that it does meet the standard. We might not like the standard, but that is the problem that we've got. So I think what we've got reasons for refusal on the table now. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Constable, thank you. Now, if we're going to vote here, I'm sorry, Councillor Page, but because you went out, you can't. Okay, thank you. So in that case then, those in favour of refusal, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to abstain on that one. So that refusal is. Sorry, do we have any? Okay, so that refusal is that application is down for refusal. Thank you. Members of the public who are here for that particular one, you're welcome to stay, but you're welcome to go as well. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Good evening. Right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 5 then. It's application 25/00949/4, 3 Birch Close, Rayleigh, Essex. And Mike Stranks will present this report. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, members will see, has been brought to members purely because the applicants are members of staff. It's to a semi-detached house off the end of Birch Close, as shown on the plan there next to the railway line. If we jump to the detailed, well, let's have a look at the existing plans for a moment. The building is a semi-detached house. You'll notice that it's sort of like 1970s architecture, rendered details and brickwork, what I would call plain featured. And what this applicant is doing is trying to enhance the sort of architecture of it. They're proposing a porch to the front and a canopy over the garage. They're not too deep or over the top. It just adds interesting detail, particularly given the span of the front elevation. You'll see from the, I think it's section plan here, one of these. Nope. I'm looking for the site plan. It might be this one. Yes, there we go. You'll see that the building, this detail here is just to the frontage. It's set back far enough. There's a generous front garden area and parking. It doesn't constrain that. It would have been delegated, but for the applicants being, as I say, members of staff, we have to bring it to committee, and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions you see in the report.
Thank you, Mike. This item is in the Swain Park and Grange ward. I don't believe there. Oh no, Councillor Vilma Wilson. Would you like to speak on this one? Usual thing, if you speak on it, you can't speak in the debate or vote. Okay, as a committee member. Okay, so in that case, then open it up for questions. Councillor Vilma Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very aware of this road and have looked at this property. And as the officer alluded to earlier, it's come to committee because the property belongs to a staff member. So perhaps slightly cheekily, Chair, I would just like to say I have no objection. I hope the committee members don't, and just would like to move this recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, we have a recommendation from Councillor Vilma Wilson and a seconder from Councillor Steptoe. Does anyone want to speak on this matter first? Nope. Okay, so those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. If only every application was that short. Okay, item 6, application reference 25/00885/full sales office, Buttermere Gardens, Hullbridge, Essex. Mike Stranks, back to you again. Thanks, Mike.
It's me.
Oh, hang on, I've got
my turn now.
Blame Vicky.
First of all, I need to point out that there's a slight recommendation to condition 4. We originally said the car park should be open from 8 a.m, but if the surgery is open from 8 a.m, then staff and patients need the chance to arrive there beforehand. So we're recommending that condition 4 should be approved subject to the revised condition 4A set out in the report, and the remaining conditions to be otherwise set out in the officer report, and also, of course, the agreement for the £5,000 for the parking. I should also explain that the reason it's been brought to the committee is because of the need for the parking payment, which will probably need a Section 106 agreement. The background to this application is the the High Elms Park development that's built to the west side of Hullbridge and provide quite a lot of additional dwellings to the development, but it also had a sales office at the southern end, so that people could book appointments and go and see the houses that they're interested in and sign all the paperwork and so on. And the sales office was subject to a condition that it should be removed at the end of 2024, but in the meantime, a proposal to use it as a doctor's surgery. The practice has a surgery in the elsewhere in Hullbridge, but they want this as a satellite. So we've now got a planning application for the change of use of the building and also effectively overriding the condition requiring it to be removed at the end of 2024. This is a sort of use which is generally appropriate to a residential area, but there is one problem with the application, that the car park is very close to 31 Lower Road, which you can hopefully see on the plan. And whilst during the day, because it's near the main roundabout, Lower Road and Buttermere Avenue, I'm not quite sure, Buttermere, whatever it is, it's a busy junction, but there has been a problem of overnight use, people loitering, parking in the car park and chatting and causing nuisance to the neighbour. So we've recommended a condition to require a barrier or other means of restricting use of the car park out of hours. I perhaps should also mention that there are some alterations to the building. Most of them are fairly minor, swapping doors for windows and windows for doors, but there will be a canopy on the southeast elevation to cover a concealed bin store and cycle parking. Basically, it is a use, as I said, which is appropriate to a residential area. The person who lives at 31, they originally obviously had green fields before this development went ahead, and they were hoping that the sales office would be demolished in at the end of 2024. The proposal for this site, sorry, perhaps we need to start running through the slides, Mike. That's the that's the overall site plan with the car park and the building occupying most of the site. Next slide, please. That shows the layout of the surgery with 3 consulting rooms and then the other facilities that doctor surgery needs, reception, toilets, changing rooms, things like that. Next slide, please. That's the front elevation, which you can see there, which, main changes to the doors, the entrance doors, if you can lift. And that's the side elevation with the canopy and the bin store and the cycle parking. Next one, please. That's at the top, it's the other side elevation and the rear elevation. I thought we had one showing the layout of the site as approved. The original estate layout. I thought I saw it earlier. Yeah. Yeah. The proposal for this area was originally it would be open space with a sort of children's play area, not the normal one with sort of swings and roundabouts and things like that, but rather it would be rocks for children to scramble on and sit on, so less prone to vandals, but a different form of play, and also a swale to assist with the drainage, and the swale has been provided, although not quite in the form shown on the plans here. I understand that the person living at 31 had asked Bellway or David Brett. Sorry, what's the other? Sorry, Barrett's and the other developer to do away with that, but they never sought a formal permission to change that. But obviously, if you grant this proposal, which clearly will provide a useful community facility, then that will override what's previously been approved on the site. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We have one speaker for this item, Councillor O'Brien from Holbridge Parish Council. If you'd like to come to the microphone. You have 5 minutes, and as always, I'll give you a 1 minute notice at the end.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted to be able to come along here tonight on behalf of the Parish Council to speak on with regard to this application. The value and importance of this facility to the village of Holbridge is unmeasurable. The current Riverside Medical Centre provides a high quality of medical services despite current constraints on the existing buildings complexes. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
That's all right. Just take your time. That's fine.
The value, as I said, is quite immeasurable. I have experience of the quality of the care at this practice. A few years ago, I was rushed to Southend Hospital because I was having trouble breathing. Southend discharged me because they said that there was nothing wrong with me. But because of the dedication and persistence of one of the GPs at the surgery, I managed to be referred to a consultant who whipped me into hospital quickly for an operation. And I'm here today to talk about it. So I have a lot personally to be thankful to this surgery. But I'm just one person. Probably most people within the village will have similar stories that they know of. And they've managed to do this on a very compact site, and they desperately need to expand to be able to improve and develop further the clinical services that they can provide. I know the parish council has been working closely throughout for over 10 years in support of the medical centre to try and get this expansion. We've been one of the main proponents, along with the Rochford MP, Mark Francois, who's played a very prominent role in this regard. The building was originally offered to Holbridge Parish Council by Barrett David Wilson. We had no meaningful purpose for this building, and so we recommended that a dialogue take place between the medical centre and Barrett David Wilson. As a consequence of that, the medical centre sees this site as a valuable addition to their provision. Throughout, whenever certain conditions have been required of the medical centre, they have been quite willing to meet these conditions, as shown as a commitment by this practice to the local community. I know, having read the planning officer's report, that there is a recommendation to approve this application. On all our behalf, I hope the councillors will approve this application and provide the practice that Holbridge needs and deserves. And please bear in mind that with the threat of hundreds, if not thousands, of additional housing on our doorstep, this is a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. I think you've spoken very positively for your residents. If you'd like to take your seat again, thank you. We have Ward Councillors Knight and Stuart Wilson. Do you wish to speak as members, or would you like to give... I don't know why I keep on having to ask this. It's ludicrous, isn't it? Okay, we're speaking the debate. So, as members, would one of you like to speak first? Sorry. As a committee member, I should say.
Thanks, Chair. This provides a welcome and unplanned opportunity for the community. And notwithstanding the objections from the neighbour at number 31, I think one of the big benefits from this is, first of all, it's already there. And it's not going to do any more environmental harm, because if this building was demolished and it goes back to grassland, it was never woodland, it was grassland, the net biodiversity gain is nothing. So from that point of view, it ticks all the boxes. The one thing I would say is that in relation to the noise that the neighbour has suffered, could we have a look at the diagram? The layout, it looked like it showed trees, and I'm not aware that there are any trees there. Yeah, so those round things with... Yeah, are they supposed to be trees?
I think they're bushes rather than trees.
Right, okay, that clarifies it. I mean, all I was thinking was, is there any way that we can have some sort of natural acoustic screening rather than have fences or something like that? But I'm not sure whether that would be feasible in that position. But no, I'm fully in favour of this. Thanks, Chair.
John, is there any mileage in looking at conditions for that? I'm not sure there is.
Number 31 has several windows facing the site at both ground and first floor level, so it would have to be really quite a high fence to achieve much useful noise reduction. I don't think it's very practical, I'm afraid.
Okay, you all right with that? Okay, Councillor Constable. Sorry, Councillor Knight. Sorry.
Don't mind.
Yes, sorry.
I'm fully in favour of this development. I don't use the doctor's surgery in the village that I live in. Unfortunately, I'm somewhere else. But I do know people that have, and I think this is a very welcome, lucky turn up for the villagers to be able to use. My only concern I've got is the 12 parking spaces. You're going to have at least 3 doctors, 2 receptionists, so there's only going to be 7 available. What I am concerned about is patients parking on the road adjoining the site. That's my only concern.
I think that is why we have the 4A on the conditioning, right. Because obviously it's something that we anticipate may happen, so there's a mitigation in there if it does. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Just a slight point, Chairman. I forget where it is with the report, and I won't delay things by trying to find it, but I believe in the report there is a calculation that I think says your standard requires, I think, 10 spaces for the 3 consulting rooms, and because they provided 12, there's a slight extra provision. But the Highways Authority have anticipated that could be a problem, which is why they've asked for the funding to be parked through the application, that if, as you say, it does or becomes a preference to park on the street, then that money can be provided to introduce parking controls. But there is... If you was in a fight on saying there was inadequate parking, which is not the point made, this actually has an over provision as it's presented to you. So I think it would be down to preference and how they manage the appointment system. From time to time, some appointments take longer and cause a bit of a backlog. You can't really plan for that. But the Highways Authority have belt and braces saying, well, if that does arise, we want the funding off the developer to secure the management.
No, that's great, thank you. But I fully support this application because we all know how hard it is to get to a doctor's. So, yeah.
As a general comment, I have to say that it is refreshing to see that on one of these big sites, we've finally got an NHS site, which is rare. Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got one question and an observation on this report. The question is, it talks about £5,000. It doesn't say who's providing that £5,000. Perhaps a little bit of clarification on that. And secondly, Councillor spoke about the biodiversity of the site. Now, if those people on that site would have to travel down to the existing surgery, that's an awful lot of cars on Ferry Road that won't have to do it. So you've got the people on the site will be, you know, some of them will walk, some of them might drive nearer to it. So you've got a biodiversity on that for the climate, and also it would benefit people living on that end of the village, that they haven't got to try and get all the way down Ferry Road. Ferry Road, although it's a block end road, it can be a very busy road with people going backwards and forwards. So I think it's a very positive thing to have the surgery there. I would just like a bit of clarification on the monies, please.
Agreed. John?
Yeah, it's from the practices funds.
Councillor Belton.
Thanks very much. Yeah, like colleagues so far, I'm in full support of this. It's a welcome addition to the village and the development. And I've heard from a number of residents around this site about the antisocial behaviour and the problems that go on in the car park. So I actually think this adds a benefit, because the car park will be used for the right reasons moving forward, and the addition of a barrier I welcome fully, because it will stop the overnight antisocial behaviour, which is the bigger problem, rather than sort of congestion during the day. So I actually think not only do we add the benefit of a doctor, or doctors and consultants, we had the benefit of the reduction in antisocial behaviour. And I've heard firsthand from the police that they have to frequent this area, and hopefully that will be reduced as well. So I think it's a win-win personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on your point, I spent most of my day today talking to the ICB about getting them to spend money on surgeries and the like. It's been quite an intense day today to actually do that, so I'm very pleased to see that this is actually happening. It does make me wonder, though, going forward, we've got lots of these sorts of sites that will be potentially coming forward. When the developer looks to have these showrooms, which is what it is, they need to have permission to actually do that, that we perhaps ask them to looking forward to having it used for other reasons, like surgery, shop, or other community use. Perhaps that's something that we ought to take away and ask them to do. I've got a couple of questions around the site. When we were out on the site visit, it's a very attractive site. It's very well maintained because it's a showroom site. I'd like to make sure that that remains, that the site is kept neat and tidy. The bushes along the boundary between there and number 31, I do wonder if perhaps those bushes are allowed to grow up a little bit more, and then they will become in themselves quite a good sound barrier. They will absorb a certain amount of sound. The other question that I did ask at the site visit is around the railings, or the metal railings around the front of the site where the barrier is, whether they will be maintained and kept in place, because I'd hate to see that where people will have just carte blanche access around the barrier. So perhaps officers can clarify whether that those things will remain.
John, is maintenance something we can condition?
Probably in theory, although it would be a little bit tricky to draft a condition. But I mean, normally when you've got a virgin site, you impose a condition. You've got to get a landscaping scheme agreed, and then it's maintained for a period of 5 years or whatever. Here you've got the landscaping there already. We could probably reasonably require them to be maintained for a period of 5 years, and any replacement, any planting that dies being replaced. We could do that if we wish to. Regarding the railings, the applicants have confirmed they've no intention to remove it. The idea of the barrier or other means of controlling the car park is to exclude cars. It will be very difficult to exclude pedestrians. So, unfortunately, if kids with skateboards or whatever want to use it, it would, you need a sort of 6-foot wall or fence around it to exclude those, and that would be rather unsightly. But the practice do intend to retain the railings.
Thank you, Mike. I see you're hovering.
Yeah, just to follow on from what John said, Chair, the difficulty we would have about the control over the landscaping is you'll see that the outer areas, the bushes that were mentioned, etc., they're actually outside of the designated site that I'm following with the cursor of this permission. So if you were to grant permission, you can only reasonably expect a condition to be enforced that's in relation to that site. I think the applicants have come back to us following questions we raised at the site visit. John will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they said that the remainder of the site is in the management, probably currently, of Barrett David Wilson Homes, that would then subsequently be transferred to a management scheme or residence or whatever in due course. So if you were to say you wanted enhanced landscaping, the doctor's practice would have a problem that they couldn't achieve that even if they wanted to, because it's on land that they don't control. So I think we need to be careful of putting an onerous requirement on them that is not possible under planning, because that's not the extent of the site. Thank you.
I think probably one of the things we'd like to think there is that if this doctor's surgery is going to become a community hub, the community would want to see it looking tidy. So I don't know, Mike, if you want to come back on that at all, do you?
Yeah, I think it's important that it is maintained in this area if it's the management company that is looking after the grounds, because it is a key site, because it's the entrance to the whole estate, and it is going to be something that is going to be very much on show 24/7.
My feeling is that if it does get a little bit scruffy, that the management might actually get onto them. On your first point about possibly thinking about the future with any sales suite that might be on any of the big sites that are coming forward being suggested for community use in future, I think that's one that perhaps we can take into the next municipal year for planning policy. It's a good suggestion, actually. Okay, so Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that the whole site is managed and also is paid for by a management company that will do the whole site, as well as I'm sure that the doctors would have an agreement equal to the residents that they will pay for their part to be maintained, like everything else is in perpetuity to everybody else. Getting on from the site, the car park itself seems to be a somewhat barrier to the property next door, and it's all very well saying bushes will grow. Yes, they will grow, but unfortunately they grow up and out and nothing at the bottom. So where the exhaust is in a car is at the bottom of a bush, and therefore that is where the noise comes from. So it won't stop any noise. What I would ask is that if the planning officer could somehow put a noise barrier screen around the car park, so that would then kill the noise completely, and also as a barrier to the car park, electric bollards that come out of the ground, which you could just install electronically. They have their own supply, and you can have one come straight out of the ground, and that will stop any cars coming in like they do at Southend High Street. So I just wondered if those two recommendations could be put forward, that would then solve the problem all round. Thank you.
I do have a little experience of sound attenuation. It's not quite as easy as putting up a barrier. The problem with sound is it wraps around. So you know, if you're going to put a barrier there, it'd be pretty high to make any effect really. So I'll defer to officers on this, but just let the officers come back first, I think, Chris.
Can I just point out to you that we did put sound barriers around the car parks, the lorry parks, recently in Rochford. I think it was about 2 years ago when we asked for a barrier of around about 8 foot to go around the perimeter to stop noise interfering with the offices that are there. So I do think that an 8 foot barrier can be put in any case.
I think we might come into a bit of a problem there with design. I think that would actually kind of look a little bit incongruous. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll defer to officers for comment.
Chair, taking the sound barrier further, I think John made the point quite rightly that at a prominent location on entry to the estate, one of the big ambitions of these developments on the edge was to transform the settlements like you see on the approach to Rayleigh, you see on the approach to Rochford, you see on the approach to Holbridge, that was like back fences and gravel boards and usual mess. The whole idea was to have an inviting edge. One of the achievements and aims of releasing the site, you'd have more of a welcome edge. And I think if you had a barrier acoustic fence, I appreciate the intention, but John made the point that the need for the height, that I think the chair is also saying, would be quite a hostile. It wouldn't. At the moment, you've got a lovely landscape site. I don't think we'd have been lucky enough to get the kind of landscaping if it had been a typical scheme, because it's their sales pitch and they want to show the site in its best. We've inherited not only the building, but we've inherited a good quality landscaping scheme. So I think that the distances, if you've got the barrier in that we're looking at, and the problems with some of these electric ones, if there's a power cut or too much water getting there, might fail, don't work. So we were looking perhaps at either a barrier or a lockable post, something a bit discreet, just to stop the cars in. As John made the point, sometimes perhaps kids get in there with skateboards, and particularly if there's lighting around and things. But the problem, our understanding is, it's been guys turning up with cars, eating takeaways, playing music, having a lot of fun, as it were, because it's a free space. A traffic management feature in that entrance will resolve that, whether it's an electric appearing pole or a lockable or a barrier. We've asked the applicant in the condition to give us details of what they think. So we've not told them it shall be a barrier or it shall be something else. We've let them come forward with what would work. But on the acoustic barrier, I understand the value of that. I'm, for one, born and bred, but not sure where the lorry park is in this district. I'd like to know later where that is. But I think John, as I said, made the point that from a design point of view, the barrier could be a problem. I think, Chair, you shared that thought. We've got a lovely site here. To stick a box would I think be a shame. It would make it worse than what we've currently got.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. We're talking about bushes in front of an acoustic barrier. We're not talking about putting an acoustic barrier. You're talking about putting bushes in around the car park area. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve, is to mitigate the noise to next door, to the people next door. And I do believe we could do that by putting a barrier in there, which will be covered with bushes. As it grows, you won't even see the damn thing, and it will help towards mitigating exactly what that person is up against. And I think that will be a good idea. I do agree with having a surgery there. I think it's worth its weight in gold. But I do believe that there is a problem, and unless that problem is cured, we've got the Rayleigh Town Council. Let me just explain. Rayleigh Town Council has got a 2 metre barrier, 2.2 metre barrier. and somebody went in there on both in and out, smashed it just to get in. So a little post coming out of the ground, whether it be 3 inches, is not going to stop anybody getting in. And the private property, even in down my road, has got 4 of those. So still doesn't stop them.
Okay, I think you've made your point. Just one thing I would ask, in the negotiations that we've got on the barrier, bearing in mind that one of the antisocial problems we have these days is lads congregating on mopeds. So I would suggest that a barrier is probably going to be more effective on that if in our negotiations we can bear that in mind. Councillor Steptoe, you wanted to come back on something?
Yes, Chairman. I wouldn't be able to support a 8-foot fence along the property there. You've got to take into account the house, number 31 there. It has got quite attractive views right across there. There is a number of windows on that side of the property. Yes, from the surgery side, you put bushes in front of it, it will hide the fence, but from the 31 side of the fence, it's not going to be very attractive. So I couldn't support that particular suggestion. My suggestion around the bushes, because when you look at the car parking, the cars are not backing towards the fence, they're actually at 90 degrees. It's just a case of, let the bushes grow up here. It will help the noise. Won't cure it, but it will help it. It will mute it down.
Okay, I think we need to move on from that point. Okay, so Councillor Squires-Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. At the site visit, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I am in favour of this change of use, but also I'm very mindful of neighbours, particularly number 31. So at the site visit, I was asking about lighting in the car park and if there would be lighting. Maybe I've missed it, but I can't see anything in the report about lighting there. Is there going to be lighting?
John, come back.
Yeah, of course the report was written before the site visit. Yes, I've raised a query with the applicants and I've been told we require external sensor lighting to ensure the safety of patients and staff during dark mornings and evenings. The lighting would be sensor activated, facilitating safe pedestrian movement between the car park and building entrances. But I don't think it would be reasonable to impose a condition requiring approval of that lighting. We would normally only impose such a condition if it was, say, in the green belt where there's wildlife issues and also trying to achieve dark skies, or alternatively, would perhaps a situation like a golf driving range where lighting could be a problem to a neighbour. We wouldn't normally impose such a condition requiring approval of lighting in an urban location, and if we did, it means more red tape both for the doctor's practice and for the council in dealing with the approval. There are powers under nuisance legislation if lights are too bright for the council to take action, but I would expect, particularly with the prices of energy going up, that the doctors will only want reasonable lighting, which isn't likely to be classed as a public nuisance.
You disappoint me, John. We like red tape. Councillor Bill Wilson. Oh, sorry. Councillor Squires-Coleman, you want to come back?
Yes, is that possible? Thank you. So you're saying that they are proposing lighting to enable visitors to find their way back to their cars. Has been looked into then what effect this will have on the neighbouring properties? Or has it just been accepted? And
it's just been accepted. There's only been a few days to look into this. We've exchanged emails with the agent, but I would envisage they would not want to put great big bright floodlights. It will be fairly discreet lighting, but should they do that, there is nuisance legislation which can deal with the problem. So in theory, you could impose a condition requiring the approval of subsequent lighting, but my recommendation is you don't need to do that.
I come back. I'm sorry to push on this. So would it not be more sensible to put in a condition than actually have to go to a legal route later on?
I don't think it's necessary. There is other legislation to cover that, and general government guidance is you don't duplicate legislation.
I know I'm only anticipating, but because there are pillar lights around the car park, I would expect that the additional lighting is only going to be minimal. That would be my expectation. I think we need to understand that this is a doctor's surgery, so you'd like to think that they would be sensitive to whatever they are doing on that to the community. It's not like it's a sports club or something like that. So I think we just have to trust that they will actually come up with the right plan there.
I take that point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vilmilson. I should just say, by the way, including yourself, I've got three more councillors looking to speak, and then we'll go to the vote. Unless you... Councillor Vilmilson to start off with. Why do you do this to me?
Because it's good fun, Chair. Most of the points I was going to make have already been said. I would just like to add really quickly, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the residents of Holbridge. You know, why on earth would we not? As I attended the site visit that the officers kindly arranged, which I found really helpful, I totally agree with this, and I really like the barrier condition that's going to be put in, because I think that will stop a lot of the disturbance that's going on at the moment. Yes, the bushes will grow. There are some trees around there, which I think in a few years' time, hopefully, will help the resident with the overlooking and the sound nuisance problem. Yeah, this is such a good opportunity. We'd be crackers if we did anything than vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Stuart Wilson next. Oh, you're all being so polite.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say what a remarkable and innovative project this is, and it's a fabulous and most needed injection of resource to the community of Holbridge. And as Councillor Wilson just said, we would be crackers not to take it up. It's just a marvellous thing, so I'm fully supporting this. Thank you very much indeed.
And finally, Councillor Stuart Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I've been involved with this for all the time that I've been a councillor for the last 10 years. So can I be a bit cheeky and move the recommendation on page 58 as my last act of councillor?
Do I have a seconder? Okay, the two Holbridge councillors proposing a second, that's only right. Okay, so those in favour? That is unanimous. Actually, before I did that, I should read the full amount of this. It is retrospective, but I'm sure you'll be fine with it. It is proposed that the committee resolves that planning permission be approved subject to an agreement on a planning obligation under section 106 of the Act requiring a contribution of £5,000 index linked to be potentially used by the South Essex Parking Partnership to implement suitable parking restrictions on the local highway network if it transpires that there are issues with parking overspill from the site once operational. The monies are to be repaid after a period of 5 years from commencement of the use if found not to be required, and the conditions on page 58 and 59 of the report and condition 4A within the addendum. I presume that no one has any objections to that. Okay. Councillor Stanley. Do we need to say the vote again? What are you indicating for? Sorry. You're not voting? I thought it was unanimous. That was why. Okay. All right. Okay. let's go to the vote again then, just to make sure. Okay, those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? One abstention. Thank you. That application is approved. Thank you very much. This concludes our business for the evening. Thank you for your attendance, everybody. Meeting closed at 24 minutes past 9. Have a safe journey home.